welcome back to the channel. I haven't done a video in a little while, but again, my name is Barbara Wilson Arboleda, and I own VoiceWise Singing Studio. I'm also a voice specialized speech language pathologist, and so I see both the rehabilitation and the habilitation and music part, and I see people of all ages. And today, I am here to talk about kids and singing, and my friend Arjana is going to introduce herself.
Hi, my name's Arjana Vizulis, and I am the owner of an online voice studio called Ginger Snap, Studio Ginger Snap, and I do work with very young children all the way up to adults in creative kinds of classes that have to do with the voice.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that's one way that we're pretty similar in that
Oh
we
yeah, for
work with
sure.
all ages. And despite all the progress that's been made over the years, like there's still a lot of people that have this impression that somehow working with younger students is either overwhelming or that it's not possible or not advisable.
Hmm.
And yet our experiences have been that it's actually quite doable and
I
beneficial to
think
the kids.
so. I think it's very beneficial because I think I mean, for me, for example, my actual life as a child, when I was maybe 3 or 4 years old, I was running around the house singing all of Les Mis, all of Phantom. Like I couldn't get enough like Broadway tunes all the way through my young childhood. I was in choruses, I was doing musicals as a kid. Um, Kids don't just not sing. If
Right.
they want to sing, they're going to sing. And
Exactly.
the thing is, I think there's so much that can be taught as a voice teacher working one on one with a kid, or working in group classes too.
Both.
Um,
Yeah.
that there you can work on so many things. You can work on musicality, good technical habits, vocal health,
Hmm.
um, and song interpretation, confidence building, all those things that they can take with them as they
Yeah.
age into weirder or harder age groups.
I
You know what
know.
I mean?
I
Yeah.
know. I mean, and I find that like if they have this knowledge about how to use their voice from an
Hmm.
early age, they do develop not just a confidence for being on the stage, but a confidence for self-advocacy. And I
Yes.
think that's a
Yes.
huge thing that we often don't think about because they're going to be in situations where they're facing pressure to do too much or to go too high or too low or to
Hmm.
strain or things like that. And if they know their body and they know how their voice works, then they can advocate for themselves and know what feels good and doesn't feel good. And so much of those habits and patterns can be developed. I mean, I was much like you. I had like somehow I heard Annie music at some point, then I'm like blasting that out when I was younger. I would sort of close off the living room in our house. And, I pulled out my parents', ABBA, the album.
Of course.
And I was blasting away at that. But I think that the key here is understanding that it's singing in particular. And one thing that like I will hear some people say as well, have them learn piano first. Well, if I look at my own life story, I was never really passionate at all about other instruments, and it's not that I don't play other instruments at all. Eventually, I did, but it really wasn't anything I was driven to explore until later on. And if someone had told me to take piano, it might have killed my love for music because I understand now as a speech pathologist that I have like a visual processing thing that actually makes it really difficult for me to see multiple notes on a line. And even like all through life, when I was in a chorus, my eyes would skip like to the wrong part of the
Interesting.
staff
Yeah.
and things like that. And I thought it was me, but I mean, it is me. It's kind of like just this visual thing. So if someone had forced me to take piano instead of singing because I was a certain age and said, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing that,"
Hmm.
that might have ruined music for me.
Well, it really, I think it depends upon the kid and it depends upon the individual so much. If you've got a kid that loves to sing, the thing about singing, and I think we both know this obviously, is that there's so much psychological stuff going on that like I grew up playing violin when I was
Mhm.
5. I started violin lessons. I didn't like them very much
Oh no.
throughout my childhood. Uh, I didn't stop, and I'm glad I didn't because I still play now. But that was hard. I really just wanted. I was that kid that really just wanted to sing, to be honest.
Yes. Hmm.
Um, but in any case, I think that the voice, especially, it's more than it's an instrument, but it's also in your body. So
Hmm.
when you are learning how to use that, it is synonymous with self expression and building your own confidence. So
Yeah.
there's something else going on other apart from learning a musical instrument, which it is. And it
Yes.
should have that validity and that value too. And
Sure.
of course it goes with music theory and this and that and the other. But it's like that's the sort of unquantifiable ingredient that for me makes me passionate about being a voice teacher. I also, I've taught some beginner violin and I like that, especially with like little kids and everything. But I think my where my focus really is definitely voice for that reason because that's the part that for me is interesting and how different every kid is and how different every student is, every person is, and it
Yeah.
comes out through voice. And I work a lot with folks from other countries who English isn't their first language, and I use singing and music as my primary base for how we work together. So we
Yeah.
do everything through that filter precisely because it gets people out of themselves. It gets people more confident and it gives them that like fusing that music with the words and pronunciation and stuff. It's a really cool technique to use to build your language capability and also your confidence in English, which I think
Right.
and, but using music
Yeah.
is a super powerful way
Yeah.
to do that.
It's funny you mentioned that. And it's such a great part of your work is that international component and really bringing it together. And I've done the same thing. I've learned songs in Spanish to help
Yep.
my Spanish skills, which still aren't awesome, but when you learn a song
Yeah.
in Spanish and then, you're learning what it's saying.
It's because you're expressing yourself in that language and then
Yes.
you're doing it through creative means. There's
Yeah.
something about that hooks into your head a little bit better,
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
fun too.
Right, right. Now, what's the youngest kids that you have worked with voice in any capacity?
Well, they 5-month-old babies. I mean, that sounds crazy to say, but that's actually true. You were mentioning earlier about the instruments, like it, some of the work that I've done in early childhood music training, stuff like that for some of my classes I've done, um, is learning about audiation and how kids develop
Yeah.
that knowledge and that for the first at least for the first 5 years they are getting their ability musically or they're able to channel their ability musically by establishing their own voice, using
Hmm.
their voice, mimicking other people's voices, and
Yeah.
establishing rhythm. So
Yeah.
it's all coming from your body first. So
Yes.
that's why people do recommend that even if people do start an instrument like a violin or piano, that they wait until that kid has established a sense of their voice, their pitch, and a
Hmm.
sense of beat and rhythm.
Yeah. Now
And that can only happen vocally.
you've made up your own curriculum.
Yeah.
We've talked about that in the past,
Yeah.
where you're kind of using also uh, and this is for the groups you do with those young kids and
Mhm.
different types of music, right? Like jazz or Broadway or like how do
Yeah.
you choose kind of like what you introduce? And because I think it's very close to on the speech pathology side
Mhm.
when kids are learning to speak, for example,
Mhm.
they are going to develop the speech sound set of the languages they're hearing in their environment, which is
Yeah.
one reason they encourage, for example, bilingual parents
Mhm.
to speak in both languages. to
Totally.
really expose
Yeah.
them to the sound set. So how do you kind of like decide what you're putting in your group classes and things like that for gingers?
So the most exciting thing for me about starting my own like little kids, basically geared towards toddlers, though as I said, there's benefits for babies as well, which sometimes parents are like, really? What is my 5 month old really going to get out of this? And it's the listening and the absorbing. They can't, there's different phases, right?
Yeah.
Where they start to hear it and then they start to mimic it. And then they start to do this like micro beat versus then finally like the macro beat later. And like when you start to pay attention to what's going on, it's pretty cool to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Um, and by the way, just side note, a parent cannot ruin a kid's ear. If they're out of tune, it doesn't ruin it because that aptitude that you have that you're born with, you're born with. You're not going to lose it. So listening to parents sing with their kids like is super important. And so I try to encourage that kind of participation. The reason that I bring other types of genres in is because you do tend to get a lot of the same kind of nursery rhyme, major key, da 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 stuff in like what we think of as kids music.
Right.
And though some of that is important, it's also important to have some other tonalities in there, some other genres, and also so that the parents don't get super tired of that stuff. And the more kind of diverse you expose your kids
Mhm.
to the genres, the better. And for
Yeah.
me, I have a passion for Broadway and jazz, and that's what I do as a performer. And I thought, why not fuse those like kind of timeless tunes from the last 100 years that I spend so much time on anyway?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't a 3-year-old kid like to really listen to Blue Moon
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Peak or Moon River or What a Wonderful World, or do like usually I use Broadway tunes for the lullabies at the
Ah,
end.
interesting. Okay.
And then when we do our jazz, my fiance, it's convenient to have him around because he's a pianist and we're in a
Okay.
jazz duo. So he comes in and he makes an appearance every week as Uncle Vanya. His name is Vanya.
Oh,
He
cool.
comes and he sits at the piano and he plays a jazz tune. And before
Uh-huh.
he does, we sing that tune together,
Mm-hmm.
and he comes in and he plays it and the kids dance around and this and that, and then I give that tune to the parents to listen to for that week or for that month or whatever, to get, maybe they aren't listening to that stuff on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody does, but
Yeah.
I want to kind of just bring all that stuff in, and then also do those tunes that we can do kind of a call and response, or like, vocable songs and all that stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of everything just to get the whistle wet, to be
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
stuff. And it's
Oh,
fun. It's so much fun. Kids are
yeah.
super excited about that stuff. And it's funny
Yeah.
enough, it's fine online. You wouldn't expect, but it actually, because now we've had people in France, people in Ukraine, people all over the world coming with little babies from everywhere.
Oh, that's
And
so
you're like,
cool.
I'm actually teaching the world, like there's different parts of the world in one place, which could
That's
never happen in
right.
a traditional way.
That's true. And I was going to
Thank
say,
you,
like,
COVID, for that,
I used
right?
to share a studio space with a program similar where it was
Hmm.
oriented towards the toddlers and preschools. And I
Sure.
was always amazed if I would even listening beyond and start to hear the rhythms come in. And, she would also try to incorporate like different tonalities, different modes. You might hear something
Yep.
that sounded like it didn't necessarily originate in Western music, just kind
Yep.
of um, getting all of those musical skills in.
Yeah,
And
and
it's
I think it
truly
stays with
amazing.
you. It stays with you through your childhood and through adulthood. I was there's a woman by the name of Joanne Olshansky. I don't know if you know who she is, but she writes children's music, and she's from the area, Boston area. And I was in a kids choir with her when I was little. And she experimented with all different sorts of stuff. She wrote a bunch of tunes. She's still well known around here.
Yeah.
And I can, to this day, I still remember all of the words to those songs,
Yeah.
all the different ways. And that is so amazing when you're a little kid to have that as an influence, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, where do you go when for you, like when they're like sort of finishing up that program, sort of where do you go from there? Like I have for quite some time now been really engaged in and comfortable with teaching younger students one-on-one, not
That's
toddlers, I
awesome.
would say,
That's
but
awesome.
but definitely younger students. younger than a lot of other people have been
Yeah.
comfortable with. Kind of like where do you go from there?
I haven't done, I mean, I've been coming from that toddler large class background and then a lot of private voice lessons I've done, but I haven't done, I've done some kids with like the English and music,
Mm-hmm.
but I would love to develop that
Mm-hmm.
further working
Yeah.
with younger kids. I think it's a great idea. I think it's awesome
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
do that.
I mean, this is where
Yeah.
I could, I said before we started recording, I was like, I'm going to sell you on teaching this age group
Yeah,
when they come around. Because,
absolutely.
I think I started out sort of having been raised in that mythology of there was a certain time that you could
Yeah.
start doing lessons. And, because that mythology was so strong, like
Hmm.
you don't even recognize the kind of the ironies baked into it. So, for example, they're saying that, kids' systems are underdeveloped and therefore it's not safe. Well,
Hmm.
meanwhile, they're out there doing dance classes,
Right.
lifting
Or
their leg over their
they're
head.
singing anyway. Of course they're singing
Well, and
anyway.
they're singing anyway, and they're
Yeah.
singing all kinds of stuff. Not, I mean,
Right.
they're singing what's on the radio, they're
Yeah.
singing things that they hear in different places. And so that started to break down and was finally one, a singing teacher colleague, when I was sort of still in my younger years of teaching, shall I say, Robert Edwin, who really was like the one who sold me on it, you know, and so I've found over the years, like there's people ask like, how do you know when a kid is quote ready for private instruction versus group?
Mm.
And first of all, I would say, group is always a thing, even up through high school,
Yeah.
right? People are doing choruses, people are doing
Yeah.
drama clubs, things like that. So, what is it, even just globally, that to talk about who is going to be interested and benefit from private instruction, right? And so, I feel like the first thing for me is that it's the kid that wants to be there.
Of
Right.
course.
So I'm not like I'm not really one to be like, okay, mom thinks it would be good for the kid to have singing
Right.
lessons. I'm not
No,
the
the kid
right teacher
definitely
for.
has to want to be there, or it's going to be
Right.
a
Right.
real long hour.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, and a half an hour. I will do a half
That,
an
yeah.
hour with younger kids,
That makes,
unless
that's definitely, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Unless they're like a professional kid or something. Like
Mhm.
one of my colleagues that I'm making a program on puberty voice with,
Mm.
Noelle Smith. She does a lot of work with kids who are actually like professionally singing, so they might have longer lessons.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I tend to get the kids who are just kind of dipping their toe into the water, and
Mhm.
so I'll stick to half an hour. So they have to want to be there as like because they enjoy singing.
Yeah.
Second thing, I think, it's actually got nothing to do with aptitude or anything like those words. Is this a kid who enjoys one-on-one
Yes.
back and forth
Yeah.
joint activity with an
Yeah.
adult? And some kids really do. Some kids just
Mhm.
love that one-on-one attention.
Absolutely.
They
I
love
think I was
digging
one of
into
those kids.
things.
Yeah.
I'm also not,
Yeah.
honestly, I'm not the right teacher if you just want somebody to play songs with your kids. Like, that's
Mhm.
not me, and I think that is the role of a group class, is to sing songs together.
Yes.
Despite actually having, put my best effort into piano so that I can play my chords and my vocalies, I will never be a pianist for the reasons I stated earlier. So I
Yeah.
can't accompany people.
That's
But
the
that's
same thing.
okay because I'm
Yeah.
a technical voice teacher.
Yep. Yep.
I am a technical voice teacher. I teach people how to use their instrument.
Yep.
And that goes the same for kids. And I am fascinated. Right now, my youngest student is 8. And, you know, easy as pie, teaching them what is chest register, what is head register. She totally got it. She totally
Hmm.
got it. She can hear it when I do it. She can hear it when she does it.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and then we can choose. And right away, I'm teaching her. Oh, you can choose chest register. You can choose head register. Does chest register and head register sound different in a young child? Yes.
Yeah.
And so you have to, just be aware of what some of those physiologic changes are
Don't
and what
you
some
think
of those
that building
developmental.
that awareness is absolutely advantageous
Yeah.
because without building that awareness, like you said, you're gonna be singing, you're gonna be doing that anyway. You don't know what's up.
Mm-hmm.
If they're told the truth going through their young adult, like their early, like so let's say they're 8 and then until they get to like 15, 16, 17, they kind of know a little bit more about what to expect. They
Yeah.
kind of know that there's going to be some changes going on and
Yeah.
how to safely navigate that without
Mm-hmm.
being causing damage, causing
Right.
problems. I think there's nothing but an advantage to that.
Yeah. And
No.
they can learn right away
Right.
that you can make different voice choices to sound specific ways and that none of them should hurt.
Mm-hmm.
None of them should be the scratchies, as I
Mm-hmm.
might say,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And it's amazing what they can learn. Like the even within a couple of weeks, this particular kid I'm thinking of could listen to the recording of the person. I work a lot on contemporary commercial music, and she could listen to the recording and tell me what register the singer was using,
Perfect.
right? And so they're so capable
Mm-hmm.
of this kind of
Oh
thing,
yeah.
you know. And then
Oh
I
yeah.
can tell them, okay, so this person, there's a Katy Perry song we're working on, and I'm like, so this person can sing chest register up to this note. Are you able to sing chest register up to that note? No, I'm not. Oh, okay. So when we're working on this song right now, what do you think we have to do for
Yeah.
you right now? Right? And so then we're already building in that, oh, okay, I'm not just going to blast away and try and sound like Katy Perry, right? I can
Beautiful.
still sing Katy Perry, but I'm going
And
to
what a
honor
way
my
to
own
make
voice.
it, what a way to make it that there's no shame in saying, oh my God, I can't do it like them. But
Right.
rather, what can you do? And that's perfect for you. And let's come up with a plan that
Right.
works for this song for you. What that I think does is it builds in this idea that I am enough and what
Hmm.
I can bring to the table is
Right.
exactly right. And
Right.
I don't think you can get a more important idea in a kid's head than that.
I know,
Like that's
especially kind
kind of
of
the
before the
fundamental.
teenage years. When like in
That
the
that's
teenage
still
years, it's sort
that's
of
still
like,
something
oh,
yes. As a 37-year-old, that's still something I have to tell myself
yeah, I
and
know. I
be
think we're
like,
all working on that, right?
okay. I mean, I'm a person who got, well, we definitely are. I'm a person who got, I mean, you know my story, but I got to cruise ship work 7 years ago when I was 30, and I had to sing some genres that I was not comfortable with. And oftentimes in my head, I was like, but I don't sound like this. Like I'm comparing myself constantly, right? And like now, fast forward 7 years later, like I'm finally at a place where I'm like, okay, my voice isn't the same. It is my voice.
Right.
It's good the way it is. It can be improved. Things I can learn things. Things can be, even when I say improved, I mean it can go on the journey that of the goals that I want.
Right.
Like because we have this like sort of performative mindset I think that's instilled into us that's very judgmental,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to singing. And so
Yeah.
I think a huge advantage for working with kids of any age
Hmm.
is working with them on that mindset where it's
Yeah.
like I'm in my own track. I'm
Hmm.
not going to get carried away comparing myself with someone I hear on the radio that's super processed, by the way.
Oh, yeah. And I teach
And
them
that's
about
important
that
to
right away
know.
too.
Yeah, because you wouldn't know that
You
actually.
don't know it's there.
Even
And
adults don't know that.
hmm
Professional
yeah.
singers don't know that. Like that
Right.
stuff is important to teach.
Right. Right.
It's people need to know that or they're gonna go nuts, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Yeah.
And I try also, and I feel this is important at every age, but I start it doesn't matter what age student I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
When the sound doesn't come out as they intended,
Yeah.
which could be a crack or a flip or a
Yeah.
that's not the voice quality I was going for or flat or whatever it is, I'm always turning it into a, "Dup, well, there was that," and I try to really just develop this sense, even in the young kids, because, like, the thing about kids, too, is they ultimately want to please adults, right? I mean, like, they sometimes, by the time they're teenagers, they
Yeah.
pretend they don't care, but they really do want
Oh
to
yeah.
please
And
adults.
it's scary.
And
Yeah.
so something comes out and they crack or something, and then the look on their face is sort of like, or oh, that was bad. I'm
Yeah.
like, so I'm like, not bad. It's just you didn't get what you intended. Great. Is that because, you're still working on it? Is that maybe that's because you just can't do that thing at this
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
And
But
it's
you
all
see that
good.
that's why it's like, of course it's about the music. Of course it's about the instrument. And like you said, there's a technical element and all that stuff. But also, what is that mentality going to do for them as they get older? Even if they didn't end up becoming a professional singer or going to college for music or whatever,
Right.
it's not about that. It's literally, it's like you're building all of those kinds of not like self-punishing tendencies, but
Right.
rather almost like a curiosity,
Right.
like a playful curiosity where the
Yes.
two of you are working together
Yes.
to be like, what can we do with this? Oh, this is kind of interesting. What happens if we do this and we try that? Oh, okay, that cracked there. Cool. Like that's part of the
Yeah.
research,
Yeah,
And it's like
exactly.
that mentality is very freeing and empowering your
Hmm.
whole life long.
I think so
and
too.
and I
I
think
think so
that
too.
that right there is like, and I think you and I seem to have sort of a common philosophy on that.
Yeah.
And like that philosophy can lay a foundation for the work
Yeah.
in many different kind
Yeah.
of avenues.
And I think you hit on it too a second ago where you were saying even if they don't go on to college for
Yeah.
it, and I think this is a mistake that a lot of singing teachers make is that
Hmm.
they assume for some reason like they make this assumption that if they're taking individual singing lessons that means they're interested in going on to it in college or that they should be or like there's always this
Yep.
and I hear this in teacher forums a
That's
lot
the same with violin and
where they're
viola.
like where they're like, but what about when they get to college?
Yep.
And I'm like, it's so strange because
Hmm.
the 10-year-old in a ballet class, there is no assumption that all of those kids are going to go on to be professional dancers, right?
Interesting.
That
I
that
never thought
assumption
about it
just
like
isn't
that.
there, right? And
But
so
somehow if you're taking a one-on-one voice lesson, it's like, oh, that's
oh yeah, right. It's
yeah.
all of a sudden like you're going to be a professional.
Interesting.
And it's most people who study
Yeah.
privately aren't going to be professionals. Some will. I've certainly worked with plenty of people who have gone on to
Which is
music
great. I
school. I
mean,
work with
awesome.
professional singers quite a bit as well, but the vast majority of people who take singing lessons are doing it because they love it.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
Because they value it in and of itself outside of any like monetary remuneration they might get for it. It's just something that they enjoy.
Absolutely. And that's what a fundamental kind of thing is. It's like, I think it just ties into the same thing though, that it's like, oh, you must be serious. That means you're going to do this and then this and this. And then guess what? You're going to be a Broadway star. It
Right.
isn't just good enough to have it. I mean, that's a whole different like
Yeah.
conversation for another day.
Right.
I think that has to do with this kind of like forcing people into a label and a very specific tunnel direction.
Right.
I mean, in
Right.
reality, the kinds of holistic advantages you get from practicing things related to the arts
Right.
and are definitely have longer,
Hmm.
extensive, positive repercussions
Yeah.
than
I
just
mean,
that
and
tunnel.
even like on the medical side, for example, in the past 10 years or so, medical training and even, in all of the fields, whether it's doctors or speech pathologists, it's much more emphasized now that you shouldn't assume what the goal of the patient is. Right?
Hmm.
You have to actually ask them what they want out of whatever it is they're coming in to have
Yeah,
addressed.
yeah.
On the voice side, that might be maybe they sound terrible, but maybe all they're actually concerned about is do I have cancer? And once that question is answered, no, you don't have cancer. They maybe don't care. So they didn't come to the voice
Right.
center to rehabilitate their voice, to do anything different. They just wanted to know they didn't have cancer. And I
Hmm.
think we can extrapolate also to the singing world. Why are they coming? Some will be coming because they're pre professional and they want to head in that direction.
Yeah.
And some people are coming because they just love to sing.
Yeah.
Singing
Yeah.
gives them joy, and singing is fun and something that they want to do and they
Yeah.
want to explore.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really important for us as teachers to keep it in mind that people are coming for different reasons
Hmm.
at different ages.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And the other thing that I just love knowing is that I've seen too many times where either in the clinic I get a teenager who has developed a bad injury from straining and just had no guidance,
Hmm.
or they come in for lessons for the first time at 14, 15,
Hmm.
and now I have to undo muscle
Yeah, 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 of
patterns.
course. Yeah.
And they've learned these muscle patterns and they've somewhat habituated these muscle patterns, and now it's actually
I
harder.
would imagine. So what would be like the youngest voice student that you would work with on one, as young as they
So,
did?
yeah, so that, I mean, a good question, right? Because I have my two criteria, right?
Right.
The youngest student I have worked with one on one was 5,
Yeah.
right? But again, it's that and I've actually, there have been some, say, 5-year olds over the course of my career that they come in for a few, because I'm always like, hey, all right, fine, let's do a few lessons.
Yeah.
And some of them are like, yeah, they have fun, but it's not really gelling. And then it's like, great, well, if you're ever interested later on, cool.
Mhm. Check in
And
with
there are
me in a
some that
year.
have
Yeah.
stayed for several years and they just, it's their thing. They like
That's
it.
awesome.
So it's quite variable.
Yeah.
But again, if a parent inquires, I talk to them about what I think is important.
Yeah.
Those two things are, do they want to do it, and do they like directed one-on-one activity with an adult? And often they are still in a group environment. Again, sometimes people use the excuse, they say have them do a choir instead. I'm like, have them do a choir, and
I
if
was
they
just gonna
really love
say,
it.
what first of all, those two things are different and they're
Right.
both totally useful.
Yeah.
I don't think one should be instead of the other.
Right.
They're totally different experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I mean, so did I sell you on it yet?
You definitely did. I mean, I don't see why there is this sort of stigma. Like, I mean, I get why, but I disagree with it as well. And
Yeah.
I think that working with literally any age, I mean, there's no reason if I start at 4 months old and I'm going to, 95 or 100, like
Right.
like it's joyful to me to be working with any age. And I think that
Yeah.
any age provides really kind of different things, but also something very unifying about it at the same time.
Mhm.
I mean, little kids are little humans,
Yeah. Yeah.
with and I like working even like my 3-year-olds in my online like group
Mhm.
class, when we're connecting and stuff, and I'm like, this is
Yeah.
they're like tiny little excited people that are always kind of up for anything, you
That's
know
true. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
so up for anything, like they're kind of like happy drunk people walking. They are. And they're like, okay, yeah, I'm like, what else can we put on the snowman?
Yeah.
I want to put a big purple shoe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Big purple shoe. Great.
Right.
Like
And
it's just so much
if I'm
fun.
doing vocalese with
Yeah.
young kids especially, I'll be like, okay, name an animal, and they give me an animal, and I build a vocalese around it, and then I say, okay, what's the animal doing? And they say something that they're doing, and I develop the vocalese into something else that has
Yep.
both those words,
Yep.
and
It is
they are, as you
delightful.
said, up for anything.
They are.
And I've had recitals, in the real world when it's not, COVID times, where I have had literally an age range from like 7 to 65, all singing in the
Wow.
same performance.
I love that. That's
And
awesome.
it's so wonderful to see,
Mhm.
and you watch it's funny, you watch the younger kids in particular look at the teenagers, because you know how that goes,
Oh
right? The
yeah,
teenagers are
of
looking
course.
at them, and then you see the teenagers looking at the adults
Oh,
who are putting themselves out there,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, that's awesome. What
and
a
it's
cool
really,
thing. And you see
yeah,
that through thread. Yeah, I love
yeah.
it. That's great.
So, anyway, this has been a
Oh, this is
fascinating
awesome.
discussion, and I hope the
Very.
viewers have really gotten something out of this just in terms of thinking about, how kids learn singing, and you know,
Super
the
cool.
value that it can have for people at different
Yeah.
ages.
Yeah. Thank you for having me and for
Yeah.
talking about it. It's
Yeah,
talking
it was
like,
this was
yeah,
fun. This was a lot of
it's
fun.
very thought provoking and it makes me want to just like go teach for the rest of the day. Like,
Great. Awesome. All right.
all
I'll
right,
talk to you soon.
cool. Bye.